with John Impemba and James Grande.
What is going on, FANation? John Impemba here with Justin Carlucci. Welcome into the Fantasy Alarm NBA DFS Playbook live show. It is a 6-game main slate here tonight, starting at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. So, Justin, we got the extra half an hour to get ready for tonight's main slate. We do have the late night hammer 10:30 on this one as well, Portland, LA. And that game got a whole hell of a lot more interesting with Anthony Davis being listed as doubtful for tonight's matchup. So our Austin Reeves shares can live on here tonight in this matchup against Portland. We're still waiting for news on James Harden, who is a midday downgrade to questionable for today. Steph Curry is questionable for today. So we'll go through it all position by position. We'll give you guys a breakdown of the slate. We'll build a lineup. We'll answer your questions and hopefully have a successful night here. Yesterday, you tweeted out that NBA DFS is unplayable. The McBride news was wildly frustrating for us, obviously, in Discord. I think across the industry as a whole. And you heard Grande and I kind of talk about it. You know, in my contest, only 43% of the people pivoted to McBride, which felt super low. Like, I was excited at first, like, wow, what leverage? And then immediately get the news that he's not even on the bench and then he doesn't play. What's your take? Because now we've had a couple of instances where guys get ruled out basically right as the roster lock is happening, a minute or two afterwards, where we feel like that information maybe should have just been available at some point.
It's just maddening. So minor victories and silver linings on bad nights. I had like 90% McBride and I made back like 2/3 of my entries. So I'm thrilled to not get crushed. But at the same time, it's kind of what could have been, you know? I was shocked. I played FanDuel yesterday. I'm playing FanDuel again today. And I think there's some good talking points between both sites. But Campaign, even if he was coming off the bench, he was 3% in the big, the flagship $5 on FanDuel. So
yeah.
Cat was 12%. Couldn't believe it. I was way overweight on the Knicks. They crushed. It is what it is, man. I just had some deja vu and some PTSD from playing DFS in the bubble. I still remember that one slate when DeAndre Ayton like missed his COVID test and he was running around, you know, trying to get tested and make the bubble. So I wish we could put this stuff in the past. I really wish there was more accountability with this NBA reporting. Every year there's hoopla that they're going to fix things and, you know, they'll be 30 minutes ahead of the time, no doubt. Even if a guy gets hurt in warm-ups, there should be enough of a gap or the game should start on time where there should be some kind of notification or someone should be notified. It's sad, but that's the game we play. And I can say this, at least we're not playing a game where there's no late swap anymore, because that was absurd when the industry tried to unleash that a couple
that
years
was
ago.
Wild, yeah. When they were doing that. And I think a little bit of it has to do with why DraftKings and sometimes FanDuel as well started taking the late games off the main slate, because, you know, they didn't want to have to stick people you know, staying up forever to get these late swaps in now that they added late swap back. I also used to like, and I say this all the time, like my most profitable year ever on FanDuel was when they did the drop the low score. So like, you know, when they had the zeros, you could just kind of build around a guy. And if Anthony Davis doesn't play that night, his zero doesn't kill you. They just took like the top like 6 or whatever, 7, whatever highest scoring players. Grande and I talk a lot about that because one of the first nights, the winner on FanDuel of like the 100K played a retired Zach Randolph in his lineup, who wasn't even min price. He was like $400 above min, had Zach Randolph in his lineup. Randolph had retired, but it was in the player pool, took the zero and still won the $9 main tournament that night on FanDuel. Always kind of a joke to talk about there. So we do appreciate you guys all in the chat with us here. Chris popping in, say no AD. Yeah, AD doubtful for tonight. King of all trades in the chat here. Prime 8 in the chat, also in our Discord. And Jermaine in there saying what's up. So we appreciate you all have tuned in. If you guys have questions or comments, throw them in the chat. We'll be happy to talk about them. So 99% of the time, making that pivot is the right move. 100% agree. What sucked last night, you know, I got Towns in my lineup, but I had to use him in the util because that news came out 1 minute after Orlando locked. So I got Goga stuck in my center spot. You know, when I had the idea to make all the pivots and things like that, if it happened 2 minutes earlier, I probably could have got Goga out, Towns in, and rebuilt my lineups a little bit differently there. So Fizzy saying let's play McBride. Yeah, let's
do it again. It is what it is.
Run it back. Not on the slate here tonight, but maybe next time. All right, point guard position. SGA is 10-9. Got Dame at $9,400, Maxey at $8,800. Then we got some questionable plays in Harden and Curry. How would you kind of rank out Shai Gilgeous-Alexander tonight? Now, no AD. There's only a couple of plays up over $10,000 on the slate. Does he become the play for you? Like, where does he rank out?
I mean, I think he's going to continue to come in lower owned than he should be, especially with the Anthony Davis news, because LeBron is likely going to be rightful chalk. So I think roster construction is just going to be completely different, especially with the popularity of Austin Reeves. Again, I think that's probably good chalk, especially if you're playing some smaller field stuff. So, yeah, I think it's super easy to go overweight on SGA tonight, or at least mash the field if you don't want to get totally burnt. Grande hit it right on the head in the preview show you guys did yesterday. Everything's out of control, I think he said, including the efficiency. But, he was down on peripherals in a couple of these games too, and there might be some negative regression and some efficiency, but there should also be some positive regression with the rebounds and the assists. And, God forbid he gets a garbage steal game again, like he had 4 last night again. So I don't think he's going to be super popular, even though he continues to crush with that Anthony Davis news. So I like him for large field tournaments.
Yeah, obviously no surprise. You're seeing Austin Reeves as our highest projected rostered player. But to your point, when it comes to SGA, checking in around 10% tonight, that's less than Giannis. That's obviously less than LeBron James, less than Joel Embiid, who's questionable to play tonight. No Andre Drummond for Philadelphia. So, among the top plays here, he is definitely getting the lowest amount of ownership. Tatum might be is Tatum below him? I don't have all this updated yet. So Tatum's actually below him. Now, it looks like Porzingis is going to play. Jaylen Brown was also questionable. I didn't get a full update on him quite yet. I don't know if you saw anything, if he was trending towards playing or not, but if either of those two guys were to sit out, we went over Jason Tatum, 1.6 fantasy points per minute, like a 37% usage rate. He too would be a pretty interesting kind of pivot off the slate, but I'm with you. I like SGA a ton here. And then what are your thoughts sort of as we work down the slate here at the guard position? How would you rank out like a Lillard if Harden plays, Maxey, Curry? You can throw Hero in that conversation, and Halliburton.
Tell you what, so I've been playing a lot of low dollar multi-enter stuff, so maybe my analysis might be different for someone else playing single entry. It's just so tough playing one lineup in NBA DFS nowadays. It depends on the slate. Every now and then I'll, if I'm really busy, you really can't leave the computer if you're playing 50 lineups or 100 lineups or something, then maybe I'll fire something in. But I'm multi-entering. So this, looking at projected ownership across the industry, looks like a great position to get different, right? So I think there's a lot of good chalk in this slate. Some of those Lakers guys, you don't really have to blow up your bills to go overweight on Damian Lillard if you like him. I think the Philly Golden State late night hammer is really interesting. Curry, 8,700 on DK, 83 on FanDuel. I mean, listen, the guy's just not suddenly bad at basketball. He's not suddenly washed. Philly has been better defensively with Embiid in the month of December. Things have been much better. I just feel like, and I'm in PA here, so I see a lot of Sixers games with the eyes. They just yield points to superstars every now and then. I think this could be a good get-right spot for Curry at low ownership. And again, if you're playing 50 lineups, these guys are coming in at like single-digit projected ownership. So I think, I do like Austin Reeves a lot, point guard on DK. Nicer price on DK as well. He's 79 on FanDuel. So you have the strict point guard eligibility there. So
what has gotten into him is my question here. Like the shot volume's insane. Obviously, he benefited. One of those games didn't have LeBron. The other one, AD got hurt right away. But then they both play against Cleveland, and he is as good as he's been so far, right? 63 fantasy points in that game. Is this just what we're getting now out of Austin Reeves, or is this like a blackout stretch for him where he doesn't really know what's going on? He's got the like Mike shoes going. What do we got happening here with Austin Reeves?
I mean, he's not Javon Carter. We're not getting that, right? He's not a DNP guy. He's a guy that we know is talented.
Right.
It's just hard to statistically put a lot of weight into a lot of things because there's not huge sample sizes without D'Angelo Russell, without Anthony Davis. Gabe Vincent, I believe, doubtful or out. So that's kind of an underrated thing for minutes as well. Reeves is a guy who will fill it up, will get his shots. LeBron will get there with peripherals. And there needs to be an alpha on the team. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if Reeves took 25 shots tonight if the game stays close. So,
No, I'm with you there. And obviously, again, his price isn't that prohibitive, and he is the highest rostered player on the slate. And to your point, and Josh says here too, one NBA hand-built lineup is death. It really is. And listen, you know what? I play single entry lineups contests as well, and I hand build them, and have had probably more success than not. But there are also many slates where Grant and I will talk like, man, I just wish I had like 10 lineups tonight because there's so many good different ways they go about building it out. It all depends on your bankroll. Like you said, DraftKings, FanDuel, they offer plenty of low limit contests to allow yourself to sort of get that exposure that you're looking for here. Anthony Simons is obviously a really good spot to come back of in that game as well. Portland, with missing some pieces. Simons a great offensive player. Defensively, the Lakers still aren't all that great. So you want to go Anthony Simons there at $6,500. You can. But D'Angelo Russell last night. So, all right, Jordy Fernandez comes out and says he's going to play in limited spurts off the bench. Hadn't even practiced with the team. Met them in Toronto. Grant and I are sitting there like, how does this man play more than like 18 minutes, right? Like, if he and then he goes out there, he plays long shifts. He was the best player on the floor for them for pretty much the entire night. 9 of 13. He had 8 assists. He played some defense, 22 points.
Yeah.
I assume now, like, he's just good to go, right? Like, whether he starts or not, we have now an expectation he's going to play at least 25 minutes in this game. No Ben Simmons, right? So, like, the minutes here could be 30 plus against Milwaukee.
Yeah, tied its season high with a 29 and change usage. If you want to get technical, I don't know where it ranks. He had a couple games with a 29% usage. So, listen, there are some price discrepancies between sites. This is one of them. He's 65 on FanDuel, and if I'm not sure if we're going to get more than like 30 minutes out of him, and a blowout risk as well, I'd much rather play him at a much cheaper price on DraftKings than FanDuel.
Yeah.
So I would kind of label him as a great DK only play. And he's probably showcasing himself to maybe be traded again, or there's rumors that he'd be a buyout candidate. So, depending on what you want to spin with the narrative or the extra incentives or the non-analytical side of things, he has some incentive to go out there and play well because now he is probably one of the bigger names that will be expendable when the trade deadline comes up in about 4 weeks.
It should be a pretty interesting night for Brooklyn as well. Cam Johnson, Cam Thomas, and D'Angelo Russell, all like those are the shooters, right? Like those are the three guys that are just going to be bombing away here for Brooklyn. And Milwaukee is not really a great defensive team. Like they're getting better, they're improving, but they're still really not. You can attack them at the guard position. So right under Reeves in ownership, Russell is right there as well. Any other guards for you tonight at the point guard?
Yeah. Let's see. I don't know about the eligibility here, but another price discrepancy. Chris Dunn, is he point guard only? He's 44 on DK. He's 5K on FanDuel.
Point guard, shooting guard, but he's been starting for them, obviously. And if no Harden, minutes for him for sure.
Right. I think he's in play with Harden, for large field tournaments. But if Harden's out, tough matchup. But, you get 25 minutes with a usage bump. Maybe more if the game stays close. I think Chris Dunn then becomes a really good play.
Yeah.
So he could be kind of a backfill late swap type of look.
Sure. And then you get Kevin Porter Jr. right under him as well, 4,100. Grande put it in our Discord. The one time Harden didn't play, KPJ entered the starting lineup. Could very well see that happen again and have him play in place of Harden tonight. We know the offensive player that he can be. So it'd be pretty good value here. Now the Thunder are not the greatest matchup for anybody. But again, cheap guys on a smaller slate getting playing time, you'll want to throw some shares at them.
Yeah, totally. What's your take on the Case and Wallace? Low usage, but big minutes in the last 10 days or so. Volatile outcomes, but could get some blowout run maybe. I mean, is he a guy who might hang out there with, if he starts, will he still get some fourth quarter burn, you think?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've used him a handful of times this season, and some days it pays off, other days it doesn't. Again, what we do like is the fact that he is getting the minutes here. 8 shot attempts is pretty good for a guy that's probably like fourth in line of shots when on the floor there too. So, and you're playing him again, really good defensive numbers, 4 steals, 2 steals, 2 steals. I don't mind it. $3,800 again, it's sort of like a last man in play. Probably don't go back to the Alec Burks well. It was starting fine last night. He hit a couple shots really early in that game and then did absolutely nothing with the rest of his playing time. And they're back. They got Rozier back. They have guys back in that lineup. So Burks is going to be out for me here.
I think just one more guy, and I'm not running to play him. But if Jaylen Brown does sit Derek White, you know, like he's a guy who's going to give you a really high floor if Jaylen Brown sits. And I don't expect him to go for 45-ish, but I wouldn't be shocked. He gets a 6% usage increase without Jaylen Brown on the floor this year. So again, if it's like a last in piece and you're looking for a guy who's not going to kill you, if Jaylen Brown sits, I think Derek White is in the mix.
Yeah, for sure. Listen, I think all Boston guards are going to be super interesting here. I mean, Derek White, obviously, Peyton Pritchard, $6,000, but Drew Holiday the other day was kind of the key to the slate. If you played that early slate against Toronto, it was a 2-game 3 p.m. slate on New Year's Day there. 29 fantasy points, 25 minutes. They obviously won by 50 in that game, so it didn't get the full run. But Drew Holiday has been really good these last couple of games. And if there is no Jaylen Brown, or even if there is Jaylen Brown at this point, I think Drew Holiday at $4,900 feels a bit too cheap for what he can give you, even in a matchup against Minnesota.
Yeah, I really, if Jaylen Brown sits, I can't argue with any of the Celtics, right? Sure. I might not be in a rush to play any of them. I do like Tatum. He seems to let me down in good spots, though. Just maybe a poor recency bias thing. But like the math says, what'd you say, 1.6 fantasy points
1.6 fantasy points per minute, 37% usage rate without Jaylen Brown and Porzingis. Now, no Jaylen Brown, it's still similar. It's still like 35, 36% usage rate, but crazy numbers for Tatum.
Yeah, for sure.
Shooting guard position. Again, up at the top, a lot of these guys have dual positional eligibility, but we do have Jaylen Brown up there. We have Anthony Edwards. Norm Powell would be a really big play tonight if there's no James Harden. Again, he's already like their leading scorer as it is. But shot volume wise, it should definitely be there. It's just a tough spot, as we mentioned, going up against the Clippers. The Thunder isn't easy really for anybody. But his shot volume has just been insane this year. He's been having a career season. So I wouldn't be necessarily opposed to going that direction if there is no Harden tonight.
No, I'm with you. And I think people that have just tuned in the past month probably think we're like the Norm Powell fan club stand show, but the guy's incredible and he's in fantastic spots, and they refuse to price him at like $8K. So yeah, I agree. If Harden's out,
no Harden on the floor this year. We see Norm Powell 32.5% usage rate. And that is 1.3 fantasy points per minute. KBJ, as I mentioned, 1.18, second best on the team without James Harden on the floor. 29.6% usage rate for Kevin Porter Jr. without James Harden. So, you take those guys off the floor, and you're looking potentially to do some damage there with Powell and KPJ. Mentioned obviously Derek White. I would have a hard time playing Paul George if Joel Embiid is back, but he did have a decent game. And then I would play the Brooklyn guys. I like Cam Thomas tonight.
Yeah, so that game on December 29th, the last game he played, 48% usage rate. I thought things were broken. That just is a number that seems impossible. So this guy is the GPP wild card of all GPP wild cards, and he's so scoring dependent. But, if you asked either one of us, would you be shocked if you went out there and dropped 45 fantasy points in 25 minutes? We'd both say no, even with D'Angelo Russell.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Chris, we're both in on Reeves and Russell. They're projected highest rostered players on the slate. Now, you play on FanDuel. I know that. DraftKings, I can't imagine it's probably much different on the FanDuel side of things in terms of ownership today with Reeves and Russell. But you did mention price discrepancy is a little different there. Over on FanDuel with the Russell price tag, right? He's much more expensive over on FanDuel. We got Reeves as the fourth highest roster player over on FanDuel. And again, I'll get that updated over on Fantasy Alarm after the show. Russell does have a significant ownership discrepancy. So on DraftKings, as we mentioned, big price drop there. Third highest price player, owned player on the slate. On FanDuel, he's under 10% today. So maybe a tournament leverage play against Milwaukee for Russell, but over on DraftKings, he's among the highest overall, fourth highest now on the slate. So I like them both there, Chris. Again, I know you play over on FanDuel, so you can definitely rock those guys. But I'm in on Brooklyn tonight against Milwaukee. They're just not a good defensive team, so just kind of the way it is. Michael, would you rather play Simons or Cam Thomas or Russell on FanDuel?
Ooh, that's tough. I gotta look up some prices. I'll get back to you and Michael in a bit.
Yeah. We'll give you a shout once Justin can take a look at some of the FanDuel pricing there for you. My gut check instinct there. Let's see what the pricing is. Like you said, obviously we know where Russell is. Cam Thomas is 68. It's almost the same price. Simons is 65. So Simons is a little bit cheaper. Looks like, let's see, was that right?
Yeah, I think if you're in on Giannis or the Bucks, then I think one of the Nets will have to shoot their way in this game. So I think it makes sense to correlate in the little game stack there.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. I agree. Simon's actually $7K on FanDuel. Russell's cheapest by a couple $100, and Cam Thomas is in the middle there. So
yeah, I think if you're man, I don't know, that's tough. I'd probably play one of the Nets.
Yeah, we're looking like a 220 game total, but the Bucks are obviously like pretty big home favorites here today. So
this is one of those slates that it's a rarity. There's no game total in the 230s for once in this day and age in the NBA is shocking. So, you might look at one of these high usage guys like a Cam Thomas in a crappy game environment that might just hog all the usage and be a tournament winner with a low total. So I don't think you can really shy away from the low totals because there's nothing really that's sticking out. We're not getting a Hawks Chicago 248.5 or anything like that.
Right.
On this slate.
Yeah. Indiana Miami has the highest game total on the board. It's 225. It's also only a 2-point spread. The Pacers 2-point road dogs. Ben Mathurin against Milwaukee really was the only one getting anything going there. 41 fantasy points for them, 9 rebounds, 2 assists, a block, and a steal. $6,100. I do like Ben Mathurin today. Again, we talked the Miami matchup last night. For a little bit, at least the Pelicans were able to hang. And then eventually, they really struggled in that third quarter, gave it up, lost by like 10 or 11 in the third quarter. Made a little bit of a comeback, but only lost by 9. I think Mathurin, Halliburton, I think they're in good spots there against Miami. This isn't the same defensive team that we're used to seeing, and they don't even play at a slower pace like we're used to seeing out of Miami from teams past. So Mathurin at 61 to me, I think can fit some builds here tonight, as is Nembhard at $5,200. Like seeing that he's shooting more. When he hits his shots, we had back-to-back 40 fantasy point games there. Didn't make his shots against Milwaukee, but still played the minutes. So you have to be encouraged there.
Yeah, I agree. I think maybe there's more merit to your theory behind Milwaukee being poor defensively than me wanting to attack, Benny against Miami. So Anthony said in the chat, does Cam eating the Russell ceiling? Yeah, they definitely negatively correlate. But I think Russell's cheap enough on DraftKings, and he'll give you more peripherals that price is too generous. So
yeah,
if Russell starts, if we see a D'Angelo Russell starting, take it with a grain of salt after the Miles McBride debacle. But I would be more inclined to play him on FanDuel than if he starts. So
yeah, listen, I was encouraged that he had 8 assists last night. So if he's going to get out there and also be just a playmaker, teams aren't going to be able to slack off Cam Thomas and Cam Johnson. Those guys, you leave them open, they're gonna score, right? So I think that offense can be a little sneaky here, but definitely you put a 30% usage rate guy on the floor with other 30% usage rate guys, somebody is taking a hit there. So just take that. But like we said, the pricing on DraftKings is just far too favorable to fade Russell there at $5,200. Anybody else for you? Rozier's back from his suspension. He was playing some pretty big minutes prior to that. He has that Indiana matchup, $5,200. DiVincenzo, Zaire Williams is back. If there's no Steph Curry, you have Dennis Schroeder down here. Tamani Kamara has been really good. Duncan Robinson played a bunch of minutes. I mean, I can rattle off, 10 guys here under 5K. Do you got to lean one way or the other on this one?
I think this is a greasy large field play, but you mentioned Zaire, and I think I'd rather play him on FanDuel. He's 4K flat on FanDuel. So this is a guy who, of course, they have a lot of cooks in the kitchen now. Everyone's kind of healthy. There's new faces in town, but this is a kid they like, and I think he's kind of continuing to try out to see if he's going to be some kind of piece, whether it's off the bench for the future. So I don't like that tag on DraftKings, but at 4K flat on FanDuel is a pretty big difference. And if he gets 22 minutes at 4K, picks up a couple random steals and a block, he could crush.
Out tonight too, right? No Clowney.
Clowney, I think he has a Q tag, but I could be wrong.
Okay.
He's big. So if Clowney's out, then I'm not saying, I'm not banging the table for Zaire, but I'll definitely have a good chunk of
him. He
him.
could be the starting power forward if there's, he was starting early when there was no Dorian Finney-Smith. They've obviously traded DFS. So unless they went a lineup that had like Cam Johnson playing the 4 today, you could see Zaire end up starting if Clowney ends up being ruled out again. Left last night's game with injury, did not return, now questionable today. Seems like could go in that direction. We've been talking a lot of Toumani Camara again. Very active. The rebounding numbers have been really good for him. Not a volume shooter, obviously, as you can see from the game logs here, but when he does hit his shots, you're getting some decent production at the price. We also like Denny Avdia. We'll talk about him as well. I believe Jeremy Grant is out again tonight, right? Grant's out again tonight. Yeah. So Kamara and Denny will be two guys that we like there. Anybody else for you here, Justin?
No, you're right on Kamara. Big price difference between the sites. 53 on FanDuel, not really interested, but 45 on DK? I think he's like an exponentially better play on DraftKings just because you said he's not really a volume scorer. He needs those peripherals, but if he scores, he could crush a 4,500 tag.
Yeah, and you get the double-double, the low-end double-double out of him. You just get the extra bonus points there.
Yep.
Jason Tatum, 10-4 again. We don't know the Jaylen Brown or Kristaps Porzingis status yet. With just Jaylen Brown off the floor, though, as I mentioned, 36% usage rate, 1.55 fantasy points per minute. To your point, Derek White, 1.11. If Porzingis plays, Porzingis is 1.3 fantasy points per minute. You take Porzingis off the floor, and as I said before, Tatum's numbers just pretty gross there. 1.6 fantasy points per minute. He's actually the only player over one. Derek White's 1.15. So those two would dominate if Zinger and Brown sit. Tatum and White still, even if it's just Jaylen Brown there. Thoughts on the rest of this tier? Because obviously from Brown down, a lot of these guys have dual positional eligibility, so we have touched on them. Butler, Cam Johnson, Chris Middleton, $6,700. Do you got a preference of that, like the next tier?
Yeah, small forward is kind of gross in its own right. I think Denny's a great play, a guy who's just shown he could fill it up. I don't know the on-off splits here. I could probably look it up, but I'm imagining the Lakers are definitely worse defensively without Anthony Davis hanging out. So
yeah,
I think that's a plus for all the Blazers. So I like Denny. Middleton is kind of just like a nice floor guy. His minutes continue to rise. I do worry a little bit about a blowout, but he definitely still has like 6x upside for sure. With Dame coming back and take a minor hit on him. Caleb Martin for large field tournaments, just kind of playing better, should see massive minutes again in what could be a fun game environment with Golden State.
Sure.
I don't mind Caleb Martin for large field tournaments. Rui will probably project well. He should play a ton of minutes. I know he's coming off a stinker against Cleveland, but I kind of like Rui as a high floor guy, kind of like him as a cash game kind of look.
Yeah, and not running. The last time they didn't have Anthony Davis, they didn't necessarily go to like the traditional big with Jackson Hayes just dominating like the center backup five. Like they played a small ball, they played a LeBron 5 line. They can kind of go in that direction. Jaylen Brown officially out. Kristaps Porzingis officially out for tonight. So
all right then.
Mega
Start
Tatum
the show over, John.
yeah, and we'll refresh the ownership and see where we go from there. Again, as we just talked about, 1.15 fantasy points per minute for Derek White, 1.6 fantasy points per minute for Jason Tatum. Minnesota is obviously a good defensive team. Boston's on the road. Got to think Tatum's going to see a lot of Jaden McDaniels there. But still, those numbers are pretty legit. Got to obviously bump up to Peyton Pritchard because he'll see now probably 30 plus minutes tonight. Sam Hauser, we're at small forward, $3,700. He might start now tonight as well. So there's going to be definitely some value with him. I bet Hauser becomes one of the highest roster plays of the slate here now.
Yeah, I always play Sam Hauser when it's warranted. Drew Holiday, egregious price tag now, 4,900. Just egregious.
Drew Holiday for sure.
Even on FanDuel at 57, obviously he's not as appealing, but FanDuel's been a little more randomly aggressive pricing some of their guys, so I still think 57 is all right. I mean, we just mentioned Derek White. Of course, the game environment with Minnesota, but we mentioned earlier, there's no totals on this slate that are otherworldly. Boston still have a 112.5 implied total. if one of those guys takes advantage of a higher usage situation, they could break the slate. I can't tell you who it's going to be, but I'm going to have a lot of exposure to all these Boston guys.
And this is a game. I mean, how often do you see Boston is just a 5-point favorite too? So like we're looking at a competitive game. Again, they beat Toronto by 50, but they've also lost some games where it's ended up being more high scoring than expected because the Boston's defense really hasn't been as strong as many have expected it would be over the last couple of games. So, and now you take it away, Porzingis and Jaylen Brown, two really good defenders, could definitely be a bit more of a high scoring game here. So, super interesting. I'm not going to play Jordan Walsh, but he's been seeing more minutes. He saw 21 and 19. A couple of games there. It's probably it for Boston, though. I think you kind of stick to the guys you know. All right. Where else are we looking at here? Thoughts on Max Christie?
Yeah, I mean, coming off a dud, people might see that, but should see major minute. Gabe Vincent is a big deal for Max Christie, I think. So, listen, kind of like a low usage guy. It doesn't do a lot of fancy things peripheral wise, but the minutes are the biggest thing here. Portland's no juggernaut defensively. No problem, Max Christie at that price. I like that play a lot. And now his ownership will probably come in even lower with the Boston news.
Right. And then the other guy I'll throw in there is also Lou Dort. He just plays a lot of minutes. And as you saw, hit his shots the other day, gave you 26 fantasy points at $4,400. That's almost 7x payback. So you want to get him at 42 now. The price is that the lowest he's been this year? 42.
Yeah, and John, I mean
the lowest almost. He was 41 one other day. So almost the lowest he's ever been this season. We're getting him right now against the Clippers at $4,200. I like this spot here for Dort.
I think that's great. A great game suddenly for tournament value. If the James Harden news breaks at, let's say the good old 7:31 Eastern, right after 7:30 chalk games, all the Boston value now that's opened up.
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to open the door for Chris Dunn and Kevin Porter to potentially come in super low if Harden's ruled out at 7:31, let's say, which we've seen time after time.
Yeah. Jordan, yes, both ruled out. No Jaylen Brown, no Kristaps Porzingis, just ruled out right now. Dalton Knecht, Dorian Finney-Smith. They could go a small lineup that includes Dorian Finney-Smith today.
I wouldn't mind sprinkling Dalton Knecht in if you're playing 50 lineups, 100 lineups.
Sure.
Grab a couple of shares. He's seen decent minutes. D'Lo's gone. Vincent's out. I would just rather play the guy that could get otherworldly hot, other than like hoping for Dorian Finney-Smith, rebounds and
3-and-D guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we all remember the Fever game that he had back-to-back games of just knocking down a bunch of shots against two bad teams in the Pelicans and Utah. Not a good team here in Portland either. So definitely could be a Dalton Knecht game. I don't hate the shout on that one too, and it gives you that late night exposure. So Chris with the call out on that one. Power forward. Again, you have Giannis up at 11-4, but now I'm very interested to see where the ownership moves on Jason Tatum. Because, again, beginning of the show, he was under 10%. So I wonder how much that moves here once we get sort of those updates that come through. But you do have Giannis against Brooklyn. They're 13-point home favorites. You got to know what he can do here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's probably like the safest play. You see that red Q tag and you get a little worried, but when does he rarely kills you, right? I mean, I can't sit here and say don't play Giannis in a game where they're projected to score almost 118 points on this slate. Again, blowout concerns, but he's probably going to be the one doing the damage. Like in 3 quarters, maybe he gives you 50, and that's a bad night for him.
Right.
But yeah, I can't wait to see that new projected ownership because between him, Tatum, and LeBron, what are we going to see here towards the top? It's going to be really interesting.
Good. So again, LeBron is there. LeBron was your highest spend up previously. As no surprise, you take Anthony Davis off the floor for the Lakers and just, a whole bunch of stuff opens up for them. Take AD and Russell off the floor this season for them. And we're looking at LeBron with a 36% usage rate. Austin Reeves is a 33% usage rate. Other usage rate leaders here. So anybody over 20. Christie's got a 23, actually, believe it or not, which is pretty good. And Knecht's got 19. From a fantasy point per minute perspective here, LeBron James 1.41, Austin Reeves 1.36. Nobody else over 1. Connect is 0.93 though. So to the Connect call, potentially a fantasy point per minute played tonight for Dalton Connect at $4,500 there.
Yeah, and LeBron's birthday was December 30th, and I'm in my mid-30s now. He's 40. The hangovers don't get any easier, and he casually walked to 41 DK points here with Anthony Davis against a rugged Cleveland defense. So I do really like him against Portland. It's a tough call between him and Tatum on kind of a per dollar basis right now with,
I agree. I agree. And listen, I'm almost hopeful that people go to Tatum there because I'd rather just take the savings and just keep playing LeBron like I wanted to do all day anyways. Because he can just as easily have the big triple-double night tonight against Portland. Portland's not a good defensive team. So I would rather probably still play LeBron. But, if ownership is telling me that still nobody's in on Jason Tatum on a mid-sized slate like today, I'm going to take the ownership leverage. It's just what I'm going to end up doing here. Under that grouping, Jalen Williams, 86, Jimmy Butler, as we said, returned. There's Siakam's 75, Randall, and then you have Kuminga, who's getting a lot of ownership love here tonight, going up against Philadelphia at 6K.
He's another one, 6,900 on FanDuel. I am way less interested on that site. 6K, even with Steph, I think is very fair. Someone's going to do serious damage against his Sixers team tonight. They just give up these games. It's always somebody. And I don't mind Kuminga, but I just feel like it's a really nice super buy low spot on Steph, and he's really cheap. But can't sneeze at 6K for Kuminga. He's been great when he's had minutes. Yeah,
I mean, that's really what it is, right? Like he has just been, you've obviously tuned in and you guys have all watched. It's like Grande and I talk about Jonathan Kuminga all the time. We're like, this guy is ridiculously good and talented. Maybe some maturity issues, maybe at times effort defensively, and Kerr just puts him in the doghouse. On the offensive side of the floor, though, he is pretty legit. So, I think Kuminga certainly is an interesting spot there. And then we have Denny, who we've talked about. Andrew Wiggins is $5,600. Where does someone like an Al Horford rate for you now? No Porzingis tonight?
Tournament play.
Anything there at 5K?
Him and Rudy Gobert going mano a mano just seems like watching grass grow. They both just move so stiff and old.
Two dinosaurs,
Yeah, but super cheap. We can't sit here and say exactly where the usage will go on a given night. We can just, give you our best guess, but he should have an enhanced role. Another guy, much cheaper on DraftKings, is Naz Reid. 4,500 for what did Grande say? You guess it right, you win a prize.
Guess the right Naz Reid game and you win a prize. Yeah.
High usage guy. I don't love the 54 tag on FanDuel, but I think a really good way to mitigate some of this Boston chalk, if you're playing a bunch of lineups, is sprinkling some of these Wolves. And obviously he's the most cost-effective one. And I don't think he's going to carry a ton of ownership with the rest of the value tonight. So
yeah, and I agree. And I think that Boston could play a smaller lineup tonight that forces Gobert sort of off the floor, right? Like if they're just spreading them out, that plays more to Naz Reid style than it does, Rudy Gobert. And Al Horford is a stretch 5, he stands out there and takes 5-6 threes, that's kind of his game here. So you could see more Naz Reid tonight for sure. In that spot there. So there is no Drummond. If for whatever reason Joel Embiid doesn't play tonight, we do have Yabusele. Played 30 minutes last night. Wasn't great, but the minutes were there at least. So, if they're without both those guys, you got to think 30 minutes for Yabu here.
Yeah, I agree. Listen, I know nothing after the McBride debacle, but my best guess is Embiid's all systems go tonight. Yeah. He even so, he's a guy without Drummond who could, sneak his way into like 25 DK points and be fine.
Agreed. Let's see. Anything else for you tonight?
No, I guess just the Noah Clowney injury news now becomes one of the bigger pieces we're kind of waiting for, and it's pretty big because he's still really cheap. Again, don't love him, but I think if he's out, I'm really interested in Zaire on FanDuel, who I can't imagine carries much ownership with the news we already got.
Primate, where was your Horford lock message? Usually he pops in the chat and he says Horford lock tonight whenever someone's out. So Listen, the Clowney, we talked on the show last night, the preview show, and we saw the ownership. We're like, Clowney, Claxton, and Russell were all like the top 3 highest roster players. Like, I just can't imagine that that's going to come through. It did come through for 2 of the 3. Clowney ended up busting out, even with the injury, 28 minutes, only had 11 fantasy points. Claxton was good, and so was Russell. So people are going back to those wells tonight. You can. Obviously, at the center position, again, Anthony Davis now doubtful. Giannis, the dual positional eligibility. You have Joel Embiid. Whenever Joel Embiid is on the floor and playing 35 minutes, this year he has been dominating, and he's only $9,400. So, like, really, really good value on Joel Embiid tonight at $9,400.
Yeah, love it. Probably get a nice ownership discount with Tatum and LeBron being in, advantageous situations here. Love Embiid, like him more in DK because of the price. Just briefly backtracking so I don't forget, Derrick Jones Jr., 3,500 on DK. Yeah. If Harden's out, again, another one of these 8 p.m. possible value plays that will come in lower than they should if the Harden news breaks after the first 2 games tip off. So he's not a guy that's enthralling the play, but his role without Harden.
He killed us against San Antonio, but they got blown out and the starters didn't play more than the regular minutes. But he was really good the 3 games prior, so I wouldn't mind going back to that well.
Yep. Okay, sorry. Back to
no, dude. It was a good shout. Definitely a good shout. So again, up top, Embiid. Seven says anybody ruled out so far. Yeah, Jaylen Brown, Kristaps Porzingis were just ruled out. Ben Simmons was out earlier, guys like that. So we're the big name we're waiting on. Anthony Davis is officially doubtful. And then we're waiting on Steph Curry, James Harden news there. So Primate says, anybody like DeAndre Ayton tonight? Ayton, again, is another high ownership play because for that reason, no Anthony Davis to deal with. We're expecting some big minutes out of DeAndre Ayton tonight.
Yeah, and he's 63 on both sites, I believe. No, that's DK. What is he? He's a little more expensive on FanDuel. Love that 63 tag without Anthony Davis. I was kind of worried about that matchup, but it's not like he's a massive boulder center. Even if LA does a little small ball, he's still going to be in there. So I do really like Ayton a lot.
Yeah, Ayton's in a good spot here tonight. Wouldn't have any issues going with it. You have Zubac and Hartenstein going up against one another. They kind of similar style, right? They're just going to give you some double doubles and some decent offense. So if you wanted to play either one of those, you certainly can. Anything else for you at center tonight?
We had a Jackson Davis mentioned earlier. Big price difference here. 47 on DK. He's 59 on FanDuel. I'm out on FanDuel. Theoretically, he seems like an awesome play on DK. Trace Jackson Davis at 47. Always play a little caution. You have a young guy going up against Joel Embiid, who draws some of the most fouls in the league, and you just have to be a little worried about foul trouble. If he doesn't get in foul trouble, I think it's a great spot for him. But we'll see how they defend him. They might throw the kitchen sink at him in terms of who's going to take turns guarding him anyway. So great price on DK. I'm out on him on FanDuel though.
CW says he'd rather play Bam over Embiid. Listen, Embiid has had some issues, obviously being on the floor, but when he's on the floor, outside of when he got hit in the face, I think it was that San Antonio game. No, he got ejected in the San Antonio game for the Wemby flop. I think the Indiana game was when he got hurt. When he's been healthy, I mean, the guy's been really good. So
look at the game log. Look at the price. Over 10x against Charlotte. That's video game DFS returns, right? I mean, Boston, tough matchup, 31 minutes only. Utah, I mean, he gives you almost 10x again, right? I mean, come on, man, 9,400. I understand he has his haters out there, but you can't just dismiss him. You can't play this game with bad bias.
Dort LBJ or Tatum Hauser? I might still lean Dort LBJ there. Hauser has a pretty low floor, and he's not even guaranteed minutes. Now, his minutes are going to be a lot better tonight. No Porzingis and Brown. So he probably plays a ceiling amount of minutes here. But Dort's going to be locked into some minutes tonight. I probably go Dort LBJ. What do you think?
It's tough, but I would say that's safer. Definitely
safer.
Combo.
Definitely safer. Yep.
Yeah. And obviously this is, again, if anyone's just tuning in, AD is doubtful, but I think we'd both be very surprised if he got the late night upgrade here. So What are your thoughts on Dort? Do you like him even more if Harden plays, as he would probably be the Harden stopper, maybe some more upside for steals, or is that more of a detriment to Dort for you if Harden
No, I
plays?
think he just plays. I think that's just his guy. He'll just move over to guard Norm Powell tonight instead. Like that'll just be his assignment instead. So I'm still pretty good there on Dort. He just is he's their starting wing. There's their defensive guy there. So
I'm glad Michael said Claxton. Claxton, what's his DK price? Yeah. See, 57 on FanDuel, right? I mean, that's where you want to play Claxton. I like that a lot. He'll project really well. So I'm more in on Claxton on FanDuel than DraftKings for sure.
Sure. And then obviously there's some other centers you want to throw in there. Miles Turner. We talked DeAndre Ayton already. TJD, Naz Reid, you can play down there. We had the thoughts who we thought starts. They could start Jackson Hayes. It just doesn't guarantee that Jackson Hayes is going to play a bunch of minutes. He had one game, 35 there against Memphis. But for the most part, he's kind of been in that 20 or so range there. So
yeah, I mean, if he starts again, you're playing with a lot of volatility and a lot of fire. But this is a guy who's done damage in 15 to 20 minutes before. But I think you're onto it a little more. I think they'll play some Rui, some LeBron at the 5, and probably make do with it that way.
LeBron is playing tonight. Yes, LeBron's in. No, AD is the one that's doubtful. Gentlemen, we do like Ayton a lot. We did kind of highlight that. He's also getting some good ownership love tonight. Again, I'll be updating the ownership on Fantasy Alarm after today's show. And then Jordan, we also like Kamara. There's no Jeremy Grant. He's going to play 30-plus minutes. Better play on DraftKings, rather, because he has kind of the low-end double-double upside, but he's been really good rebounding the basketball. He's a decent defender. He doesn't shoot a ton, but if he does hit those shots, it just kind of helps out his overall ceiling. I'd rather play Denny over Kamara, but Kamara is about $800 cheaper on DraftKings. So
I agree. I think Denny's one of my favorite plays on the slate per dollar. Just strong usage rates for a guy like Denny, honestly. Even with kind of like a low key high number amount of mouth to feed in Portland, he still fills up the stat sheet, and he's giving us usage rates over 25%, which is really good.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's get a lineup built here. Man, knowing the Tatum news, how do you want to start this off? Do we want to start with some value plugs, or do you want
I think let's plug in like let's plug in like one or two of the obvious value pieces, at least in the last 30 minutes. I think you have to play Drew Holiday at 4,900 to some capacity tonight.
Yeah, I think Drew's good. I think we have to play Reeves. He's not even a value play, but I just think you have to play Reeves here. He's point guard only, huh? Drew Reeves. So we got Reeves.
Oh, that's tough. Makes it for more interesting.
Definitely makes it for an interesting build. $7,200. Did we want to play an Embiid, or did we want to play like an Ayton tonight at center?
Ooh, that's tough. On DK, let me
see what else we have for some value.
I mean,
I kind of like the Connect tournament play. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Really? Yeah. See, I'll have some. I don't think any's going to be owned. He's not going to be owned either. So,
yeah, I just kind of looking more at the numbers. You take Anthony Davis and Russell off the floor, he's almost a fantasy point per minute play. So,
I mean, you can't beat that. I would label him a large field tournament play. So let's base
for sure. This is not a cash game
lineup.
Yeah, this is a tournament play for sure.
I do like Ayton on DK. I also like Jackson Davis. I do think as much as CW in the chat said Draymond's going to take Embiid out, as much. It's probably more possible in this game than others, but I do think they're going to throw different guys at Embiid. I'm open to that. I like Ayton a lot. I do like Embiid quite a bit at that price as well.
I play them both if we build this cautiously enough here. I liked Matherin against Miami on the other side of that game. 75. So I guess this is where we make the decision if we wanted LeBron or Tatum here.
Well, I mean, I got to be honest with you. I think D'Angelo Russell on DraftKings is good chalk if there's a way to util him or something.
Yep,
as much as I'm probably not super interested on him on FanDuel because of the price, unless he starts, then I'll be interested. But I mean, that's such a high floor play.
Oh, we could if we got rid of Connect, then this actually makes this lineup a little bit. Hold on, or move this around actually for a second.
Makes it a little more comfortable for sure.
Yeah, because Connect can play the forward spot here. All right, so now we have a util and a power forward open.
Nice, and a ton of money to play with too.
Yeah,
I mean,
so we can get one spend, and then like a mid tier option here.
Yeah, I mean it's Dealer's choice, Russian roulette, gun to head, LeBron or Tatum.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the ownership update to come through to see exactly where if the Tatum bump comes any direction, but it hasn't fully updated with it yet. But if we just say we played Tatum instead of LeBron, assuming LeBron's still the chalk here, that's a 7K util.
Wow.
Got Cam Thomas, Simons on the other side of that Lakers game. Could be a pretty good option. There's Ayton still there. So there's those options. And if we played LeBron instead, 75.
Ooh, you could get Norm Powell if Harden's out. Ooh,
could get Norm Powell if Harden's out.
That's there. Yeah. I mean, we had a question in the chat about who's a priority if Harden's out. We touched on it earlier.
Derek White instead.
I could play Derek White.
All right, we just got it updated. So Drew Holiday now up to 26%, Sam Hauser 23%, Jason Tatum 20%, LeBron still 30%. So Tatum up to 20%. Giannis actually took the biggest dip down. He's now 10%.
Man, that is.
So you get a 10% Giannis on tonight's slate against Brooklyn.
That is something. He might be one of those plays where you look back and you think, in hindsight, how did we pass
70 fantasy points against Brooklyn? You're like, could have done it.
Yep. But just to shout at God's Plan here in the chat, I don't know if any of these guys are a super priority now with the news that opened in Boston, but I really like them for tournament leverage. Again, if we get the James Harden news right after 7:30, once these first two games lock, at least on DraftKings, Kevin Porter super cheap.
Kevin Porter Jr. numbers up. Yeah, 30% usage rate, over 1 fantasy point per minute for KPJ. That would be the way I would go there.
And of course, Norm. But
Norm.
In a bad game environment, when you're worried about a blowout, I'd rather play these cheaper guys who have more outs to get there at a cheaper price and possible less playing time.
Yeah, and then Denny over Rui for me, Jordan.
That's tough, but agree. I would play Denny. No problem with Rui though. I mean, he'll be in my player pool to some extent.
Could go the Pritchard route here. Go Giannis and Pritchard. Reeves put Reeves in your lineup and don't even look back. His numbers without AD on the floor in Russell are pretty gross. So
yeah, and he'll be popular. But if you build a lineup like this, there's other ways to get different, right? A sub possible 10% Giannis and Dalton Connect, who no one's going to play. It's just a nice way to play some of the popular plays and differentiate yourself.
Yeah, we're getting chalky with Drew Holiday. We're not playing Sam Hauser, which could be good chalk, bad chalk. We're basically playing Dalton Connect instead of Sam Hauser because they're both forwards. Hauser's cheaper. It just you feel like maybe Connect is in a better spot because you're trusting Sam Hauser to do something against Minnesota on the road tonight, right? Like that's kind of a tough ask, I think.
It is, but he's a guy who likes to hoist threes. It's literally a make or miss league some nights, which is annoying. And he should see what. I mean, how many minutes do you think do we have minutes projections? I mean, he's gonna play
we'll definitely have a minutes projection up for Hauser 28 minutes.
I mean, he's gonna project extremely well. You're right. He could end up being bad chalk, but I mean, he's not a guy I would totally exclude if you're multi-entering. But
no,
in this case, it makes sense for us.
100% multi-entry lineup makes a lot of sense. You're also now getting a 7% SGA. Yeah, if you're looking for some tournament leverage there.
It's turning out to be quite the interesting 6-gamer we have here.
Dude, all the injury news popping like that. So again, Tatum now up to 20%. Joel Embiid around 22. LeBron's still 30. But Giannis takes a big drop down. So a guy that is projected for like the most points on this slate, it's basically Giannis and LeBron right there. And you're getting one at a third of the ownership. And that's on a smaller slate like this. That can definitely be it. Will Holiday be on Anthony Edwards? Probably. It'd be him and Derek White. Right? They'll switch off. There's no more like very few guys, the way this NBA switches, are they just like on a man, like defensively, like they just play different schemes here. So for some, sure, Holiday will play Anthony Edwards. The other part would be Derek White. So 2 very plus defenders for sure. Two really good defenders. I'm not playing Anthony Edwards, but he just hasn't done enough for me. Reed, Kamara, or Connect in a large field tournament here.
That's tough. So my take would be, of course, context matters in a lot of these questions. We don't always get them. That's okay because our brains will explode. But if you're playing multiple Celtics, I kind of like the Reed run back for large field tournaments.
Yep.
But I like all those plays, honestly. At least on DraftKings, their prices are really nice.
Yeah, Reed is 25%. We just got another little update here. Reed is 26% owned here.
A little higher than I would like.
Kamara's 21, and then as you said, like Dalton Connect, 1.5% for Dalton Connect right now.
Wow.
So.
I mean, we could look dumb, but again, if you're playing 100 lineups, you put them in 10, you're way over the field, right? And you're not blowing up your build.
Reeves or Powell. I'm just locking in Reeves. Reeves for me is a must play against Portland tonight.
I love the Powell usage bump, but I'm a little terrified to see how the offense will potentially run without Harden. So I just think there's more ways that Powell could fail. But again, if you're multi-entering, they'll both be in my pool.
Clippers on the road against the Thunder versus Reeves at home against Portland just feels like a way better. Like if you want to like figure out a different way to play Powell and Reeves, if that's what you want to do, but I would not be taking Reeves out of my lineup tonight.
I mean, there's reasons for Reeves' recent play to stick to some degree, maybe not 58 every freaking night, but 33% usage rate, 26 against the Kings, 31% against Golden State, and now you're taking AD off the court. So
yeah, I've said it here. Fantasy points per minute for Reeves 1.36 without Russell and AD on the floor. LeBron just 1.41. They're like almost identically fantasy point per minute players. And then from a usage rate, LeBron 36.4 legit, Reeves 32.3. Like there's a lot to like about Austin Reeves here. That like you said, it wouldn't suggest necessarily the things are going to go away for him. So
I mean, last 3 games, he is 5th in the NBA in potential assists. I mean, what the hell is going on here? Many ways to produce.
Insane. Zaire Williams, for me, needs to start Beantown. I need Noah Clowney out. I need Zaire Williams, I think, starting for me to think he's going to have a minute ceiling. Otherwise, he could just be trapped at like 22 minutes tonight if he's not starting. And that worries me a little bit.
Now, let me ask you about this. What about the 4K tag on FanDuel? How do you feel about that? With his
safer, obviously, you only need 20 fantasy points there. Again, I would still rather, I think, like him starting, but as you're saying, FanDuel, that's a min price play. If Noah Clowney's out, I think Zaire's fine there for sure.
Agreed. I like him on FanDuel.
Yep, FanDuel better play. So guys, again, just a bunch of different variations of lineup combinations here. Peyton Pritchard currently getting low rostership. Nobody ever plays Peyton Pritchard. Grande called this out the other day. And he went for 50, right, against Indiana. I think this is the no Tatum game. We don't need to say much more about Peyton Pritchard here. The fact that no one's in on him. 8% Peyton Pritchard right now, projected to play 27 minutes. Yeah, I think that's a great tournament play. And again, this lineup build right here, nobody's playing Dalton Connect. No one's playing Peyton Pritchard. No one's playing Giannis here. Holiday, Russell are chalky. Reeves is chalky. TJD 20%, so we're kind of with the field on that play. Mathurin's probably pretty low rostered.
I would imagine, yeah. You're gonna get some good ownership on
4%. Ben Mathurin, again, a game that is competitive at 1.5 points since we've been on this show. That line has now moved up to a 226.5 total, and now a 1.5 point spread. So line's moving in the favor of Indiana, and the total's going up. You're gonna give me a 5%, 6% Ben Mathurin, like I'll take the low ownership there. That's fine. George and Rui. With Joel Embiid back, I can't play Paul George. If Joel Embiid gets ruled out, fine. And again, Rui's fine. The numbers for Rui aren't great. 16% usage rate is pretty bad. Connect, Christie, Reeves, and LeBron, all higher usage rate players than him. Fantasy points per minute without AD and Russell on the floor. Hachimura 0.78. Fourth best, but like not great. So I guess like if he's playing 35 minutes at 0.8, that's like 25 fantasy points or something like that. I think we figured out last night. So I'm not going to kill you, but it's not really where I'm looking to go tonight.
Me either, but to the same like degree that we're kind of thinking about Dalton Connect is if Austin Reeves is passing the ball around, and LeBron we know loves to distribute.
Yeah,
could be a game where these sidecar players, one of them has a ceiling game, whether it's Connect or Rui or who knows who it will be, but
Right?
those are.
And even thinking more about it, what helps, I think, Dalton Connect tonight too is you look at the way the Portland is going to run their lineup out there too. Like they're going to use a smaller lineup. They'll play Sharp and Simons and Scoot and Kamara and like that whole crew could lend to maybe a smaller lineup going out there for Portland or for the Lakers that could involve Dalton Connect there. So
Pritchard and Connect in the same kind of sense are the spark plugs for their teams. And there's big upside for more minutes if they're hitting a ton of shots early.
Yep.
Big upside for minutes.
And they're like the first guys off the bench for them too, so they get those early opportunities to get hot. I just like it. I think this is probably a direction I'm going to go with my lineups here tonight. We'll see. Still an hour and a half until roster lock. Everybody again, 7:30 roster lock tonight. So you'll have more time for news. We'll have the ownership being updated after the show, and then as news breaks, we'll continue to do our best to update it before roster lock for all of you. Keith's got the playbook. He's in the Discord getting you guys all ready. If you're not yet a member of the Fantasy Alarm family, our holiday sale is still going on, but it is coming to an end soon. So you want to take advantage of that. You got a 7-day free trial to start. So if you want tonight's playbook, you want to get in our Discord, get it for free for 7 days. You go to fantasyalarm.com/holiday. Promo code FA Holiday will automatically fill for you. You just apply the promo code and sign up. That gives you all of 2025 at $19.98 a month. You can cancel at any time, but if you cancel and try to come back, you're paying full price. It's $39.97. So take the discount right now. 50% off. Get access to all draft guides, all cheat sheets for all sports, all DFS betting and seasonal content for all sports, and the premium Discord. You can't beat it. Our fantasy baseball draft guide is coming out soon. You play fantasy baseball, you want the draft guide, it becomes part of your all pro subscription. We sell that like standalone for $25. You can get it free as part of your monthly package for $19.98. So you really can't beat that deal. fantasyalarm.com/holiday. Sign up today, become a member of the Fantasy Alarm family for 2025. Justin, any final words of wisdom here for the folks tuning in?
No, not really. It's going to be a really fun slate, and I think there's going to be a lot of low ownership on a lot of guys with very high ceilings. So
agreed. I'll run through these questions quickly. Drew and Nembhard or White and KPJ/Dunn?
Man, Nembhard is just so random. I mean, he pops off against Boston and OKC, and totally duds against Milwaukee. Nice usage rate, nice streak of usage rates here. I would say I like Drew on DraftKings. That 4,900 price on Drew is ridiculous. So I think if we don't get Harden,
he's a FanDuel player. Michael is so
okay. That's a little tougher. Then I would still stick with the first one if we don't get Harden news before.
Yeah, if we get the Harden news before 7:30, I don't think we will because it's an 8 o'clock game. Maybe we get the Harden news. KBJ's usage rate is pretty gross, pretty great rather. So White and KBJ would be a high play. Drew and Nembhard definitely the safer of the play because we don't know what KBJ and Dunn will look like if Harden ends up suiting up there. So go that direction there, Michael. And then Connect or Kamara. Again, all depends on what you want to do. Kamara's higher rostered, probably a safer floor. Connect definitely has the higher ceiling if you want to go in that direction, Ronnie.
Totally agree.
So, guys, we do appreciate you all. We'll have the preview show out tonight. We'll go live again tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern time to get you ready for the Friday slate. And we will catch you guys later.